Good morning, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. In this video, we have a heavy topic to discuss: the photos that emerged last night on Reddit with a contestant of this season of The Bachelorette, Eric Schwer. He is Gabby's final man on the show. We don't know how it ends, but photos were posted last night to Reddit which show him in blackface in 2012. In his high school yearbook. So we're going to get into this. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. It's a fascinating story that's still developing, and I'm going to be talking about it more on Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Neal as we sort of figure out what actually went down. His apology, we're waiting to hear from, if in fact he will give one, and all of that. I do ask people to give it a little bit of time to hear what he has to say, because we don't necessarily get these apologies right away, especially when the contestants are under contract with the TV show. But we know there will be 2 live episodes in the next 2 weeks, and I would be shocked if the Bachelor producers don't have him on a hot seat to discuss this. And I always say that communication is the best thing to do in these circumstances, and having a discussion about this is healthy. And some might say, Dave, you're some white guy. We don't need to hear from you and your opinions on these things. And I disagree completely. I think what's important is that we don't place the burden on any on any class, on any gender, on any race of people. That emotional burden doesn't belong to one set versus the other. We all need to be having these types of conversations as we reckon with our recent past and our current present. Okay? So we're going to get into all of that now. It is Trisha's day. She's our teacher today. We've been following and promoting teachers every single day for over the last month. She says she's a big fan of mine, watches me all the time. It's amazing what you're doing. I've been teaching for 25 years and I was recently transferred to 6th grade. It's an underfunded district and these kids really suffered during COVID. I appreciate any help and support. As we all know, middle school, difficult adjustment for many teens. So if we want to help out Trisha, who is a big part of our community, today is her day to shine. You can buy her any of these items from her wish list, as cheap as $7 for erasers or whatever have you, and they will go to her classroom, which otherwise would be money coming out of her pocket. So if you want to donate to her, that's where it is. Now, here it is, folks. Bachelorette is the official Instagram of the Bachelor subreddit, and they said this is Gabby's presumed partner, Eric, posing in full blackface for his high school yearbook. When will Bachelor take responsibility for casting blatant racists? And what are they doing to prevent giving fame to people like this in the future? We are appalled and disgusted by this image, and even more appalled at the amount of racism that exists within Bachelor Nation. This picture deserves to be seen. This behavior should not be tolerated in this franchise. And here it is, folks. And it says it was swell. I don't know what that quote is for, but there is Eric right there. If we look at his other photo, it, I believe, is these were the 2 photos that were posted. Of course, I was tagged in this along with a bunch of other people, and it's an interesting and kind of rough conversation. People in the comment section are saying they're tired that stuff like this keeps coming out within Bachelor Nation. My thought being this statistically is the type of stuff that comes out when you look at the dark history and present of our country, what it's founded on, where it's come from. And that doesn't mean I shrug it off, but it means we talk about it and we look at it. Eric posted this at the same time that subreddit came out. I don't know if it is it's obviously not a statement. I don't know. It says, "How do I say goodbye" by Dean Lewis with a sad face. But as we know, we have to be delicate when we have these conversations. Chris Harrison, of course, was fired a year and a half ago because he was quick to defend Rachel Kirkconnell and not the people that might have been harmed by what it meant to see her as the winner of her season of The Bachelor at an antebellum party, what it meant for people that felt like they wouldn't have belonged there. Of course, he was being interviewed by Rachel Lindsay, the first Black Bachelorette in Bachelor Nation. He was quick to defend Rachel Kirkconnell and not give grace for the people that have to deal with that. And I want to make sure that we don't fall into that same trap, that we have to give grace for people that look at those photos and go, gosh darn, can you believe that this exists in our world? And I'm unfortunately not surprised, but it doesn't mean that I accept that. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, we say, at what I asked this on Facebook. Let's jump over to my Facebook here. I said, anyone ever work for a high school student yearbook? And if so, what's the process with having teachers approve the yearbook before it goes to print? And if you want to join that conversation, it's a free community on Facebook, Dave Neal's community. And it's fascinating and it's shocking and it's sad and it's all these things and it's tiring and, all the platitudes you want to say while we discuss it, but it exists out there. So Eric posts this, and as we know, his dad was on their hometown dates, dying of cancer. Gabby, obviously was an ICU nurse and deals with or has dealt with probably death and these types of tough end-of-life conversations before. Eric's dad died. His dad died recently, weeks ago, after his battle with cancer. And presumably, Eric is the winner of Gabby's season. Like I said, that's where they stand now. After last episode, we'll have to watch it play out in the finals. I don't think the show needs this storyline for ratings. Obviously, it's one thing to have a storyline where someone says something crazy and does something wild. It's another when it's sort of like reopening wounds that absolutely exist within our country and have always existed. And if that's new to you, that's because maybe you weren't affected by these wounds that are out there. So blackface, a form of theatrical makeup used predominantly by non-black people to portray a caricature of a black person. In the U.S., the practice became common during the 19th century and contributed to the spread of racial stereotypes, such as the happy-go-lucky darky on the plantation or the dandified coon. These are terms used. By the middle of the century, blackface minstrel shows had become a distinctive American art form, translating formal works such as opera into popular terms for a general audience. So that's the standard that what existed out there. And of course, it doesn't make it right, but this existed, and we can't rewrite history, but we can certainly talk about it so stuff like this doesn't happen again. So Chris Harrison had said this after his interview went sour and before he was ultimately fired. I am saddened and shocked at how insensitive I was in that interview with Rachel Lindsay, and I didn't speak from my heart, and that is to say I stand against all forms of racism, and I am deeply sorry. I'm sorry to Rachel Lindsay, and I'm sorry to the black community. And the question that continuously gets asked is ignorance a defense against racism? Someone that would be so willing to dress up in blackface in their high school yearbook, do they have any idea the weight and severity of what they're doing? And the other question that people are very quick to not want to discuss is, at what year was it okay? Or was it ever? And being okay doesn't mean that it should be acceptable. It just means that the general audience had accepted it. And what we've noticed with social media, amongst other things, has connected all of us. It has given disenfranchised people or people that had not previously spoken up in a community against things like this, a chance to voice their opinions. So what we've seen are people that, that we've seen the special needs community form coalitions to stop using the R word. We've seen it within the trans community to stop using. So we've seen it collectively change in a way that highlights voices that haven't previously been heard. And of course, there has been a time where a clear line has been drawn in the sand. Do not do this. But it would be remiss to pretend like this didn't exist. The Office, one of the greatest comedies of all time, deletes blackface scene from 2012 Christmas episode. So The Office had a blackface scene. Now you might say, oh, they must have deleted it after 2012. They deleted it in 2020. Okay? Billy Crystal's Oscar night, Sammy Davis Jr. impersonation. Oscars has lost ratings, but it was the biggest performance in the world at a time. It was the Super Bowl of Hollywood. Well, what year could Billy Crystal have been so unaware, along with all of the people that worked to create Oscar night, to make blackface, Sammy Davis Jr. impersonation? Well, that was in 2012. Oscar host Billy Crystal drew criticism after revisiting an even older bit in which he impersonates Sammy Davis Jr., prompting claims that his blackface performance was offensive and racist. Now, this was the beginning of people calling this stuff out. Now, you can show receipts where this had happened before, absolutely. But this is where Twitter kind of became a bigger force. And people said, whoa, are we just going to be okay with this white presenting Jewish man putting on, pretending to be Sammy Davis Jr. in the biggest award show in the world? Are we just going to be okay with that? And the list goes on. 15 stars whose blackface blunders backfired. Now, what we know is Megyn Kelly, of course, a conservative lawyer turned political pundit, was fired by NBC. Of course, she was paid $50 million or something like that. And did she do blackface? No, but she discussed it. And a lot of people didn't want her defending it. Here's what she said. Well, first she said this. So after she was fired, she said, it turns out that when Andy Lack said there is no place on our air for my discussion of blackface, it was because NBC was already chock full of shows and major stars actually wearing blackface on the air. As we mentioned, The Office, Jimmy Fallon from SNL, and of course, Jimmy Kimmel when he was on The Man Show. So she originally said this. This is what got her fired, and this is what got her a $50 million payday. But what is racist? You truly do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface at Halloween or a black person who puts on whiteface. That was okay when I was a kid, as long as you were dressing like a character, she said. I don't see how that is racist on Halloween. So she asked a question which might be on the wrong side of history. I'll give her that. But that's the question she asks. And I think it's important to have these discussions because then people can tell her or educate her as to why this may be a problem. And that in turn educates people that might be watching the program. So then she had apologized and all that jazz. Now, I don't say any of this to take away from the conversation about Eric Schwer, a random guy that was on a dating reality show, or the random teacher that thought it was okay to put that photo in the yearbook, or the Bachelor producer. I don't say that any of that to take away from that, but just to further the discussion. I don't know when the hard line came that this is not acceptable, but I do know there are skeletons in our closet. And my age range, I'm 37. You have to be 35 to run for president. There will be people that will be exposed for blackface, that are running for office, that are pro athletes, that are all these things. This will not be going away. And there's a catalog of people tweeting offensive things that they thought were jokes at the time. And we asked the question, is ignorance a defense? And I don't think it needs to be a defense, but I think we do need to look at the way we discuss these things. I respectfully would ask anybody who wants to call in. We have a voicemail line. I will be making a video if we do get some phone calls with your thoughts regarding this. What should happen moving forward? Should Eric address this on air? Should it be an apology? Voicemail line 401-213-9828. My thoughts, I'm not an expert in crisis PR, but my thoughts would be to apologize, to not make excuses, to do basically exactly what Rachel Kirkconnell did, which is an apology she gave from the heart, which said, I will not make excuses for what I did. I don't want people to make excuses for what I did. It is wrong, and I pledge to be better. I am super embarrassed, that type of thing. Any sort of fighting of what it was, let the audience do that if they wish, but I think this is one he takes on the chin and tries his very best to understand how he can be better, how he can use his platform, which he will have, to be better, to learn from his mistakes, from his ignorance. So these are the stars, and the list goes down the line. And some of it's shocking. Ted Danson right there. We have a Jenner in the middle, and then I think it's Beyonce on the right. Yes, that's right. Even Beyonce received criticism for putting on blackface. So Joni Mitchell, singer, posed in blackface in 1977. Okay, 1977, well, times are different. Ted Danson, 1993, dressed up as blackface, but he went full minstrel show blackface. Not to say that there are... here we have Tom Hanks in 2004. And then, so we talk about where's the line drawn in the sand. We have Tom Hanks, which one could argue is the most lovable celebrity in the history of the world. One could argue that he has never been a villain in any movie ever. He is too dang likable. Came under fire in 2012 when video surfaced of a 2004 school fundraiser featuring Hanks and another man wearing blackface and stereotypical African clothing. Tom Hanks later condemned the bit as horribly offensive. So this came out in 2012. So maybe 2012 was when the Twitter world started to address and shame people who had done these things. Jane Krakowski on the left, full blackface. The actress appeared in blackface in 2 episodes of the 2006 to 2013 sitcom 30 Rock, in one case dressing as a black man, while co-star Tracy Morgan, who is African-American, appeared as a white woman. Series creators Tina Fey and Robert Carlock pulled the episode from circulation in 2012. No, I'm kidding, in 2020. So it's 2022, folks. This episode wasn't pulled. My assumption is until the Black Lives Matter movement that started with George Floyd's death. That's my assumption here, is when a lot of people started to look into the archives. Tyra Banks had an America's Next Top Model photo shoot where people were encouraged to do like a biracial mood. Styling techniques included the darkening of contestants' skin. Paula Deen, of course, I mean, he was using the N-word, you know. So we've got, you know, Paula Deen here, who her controversy, it's like was way more damning. But again, I'm not here to have a debate over what's worse, but I think we can all agree that that is a horrible look and horribly racist to use. Beyonce, the diva, took heat for a 2011 L'Officiel Paris cover with an African queen theme for which the pop star's skin was darkened. John Hamm, who doesn't love John Hamm, in a 2012 episode of 30 Rock. It almost seems like 2012 was the line where people stopped doing this. But even here they say he didn't wear skin darkening makeup, but he dressed with a dirty face. Tina Fey pulled that episode from circulation in 2020. Julianne Hough, the singer, dancer, actress, drew criticism over a 2013 Halloween costume for which she donned dark makeup to masquerade as Uzo Aduba's Orange is the New Black character, Crazy Eyes. Shane Dawson, the YouTuber known for his outrageous characters in 2014, forced to apologize for the use of blackface in some of his videos, including a parody of talk show host Wendy Williams. Kylie Jenner, fans of this, I mean, now you have it like, this to me looks more like some sort of alien, silver, like Tin Man face, but either way, she received heat over that. Luann de Lesseps, the former Countess and Real Housewives of New York star, apologized for her 2017 Halloween costume as Diana Ross, even though she insists that she didn't actually do blackface. I had bronzer on that I wear normally like the rest of my skin, she's told Andy Cohen. So, Oliver Peck, the longtime Ink Masters star, announced he was departing the show in 2020 after an old photo resurfaced of him wearing blackface while portraying an NBA character. And Jimmy Fallon, star of NBC's The Tonight Show, the late night host, came under fire for a 2000 Saturday Night Live sketch in which he impersonated former SNL cast member Chris Rock in full makeup. As we know, Jimmy Fallon still works at NBC. And Jimmy Kimmel, who is, very politically driven and progressive, in June 2020, an ABC late night host apologized for a series of sketches from earlier in his career when he darkened his skin to impersonate black stars such as the NBA player Karl Malone and Oprah Winfrey. I apologize to those who were genuinely hurt or offended by the makeup I wore or the words I spoke, which he hosted from 1999 to 2003. So this exists, folks. It is a topic of conversation that will not go away with this story. There'll be more photos that are unearthed, from Justin Trudeau dressing as brownface, I believe an Arabian Nights themed party, to whatever comes in the future. And the conversation about nipping this in the bud and not doing this and why it is inherently racist is a great conversation to have. I'd love to hear from you guys, specifically our BIPOC community, if you are out there and want to talk. I do not pressure anybody. If you do not have the sort of emotional bandwidth to want to have that conversation, but if you do and want to discuss what you think about Eric's photo that emerged, 401-213-9828. There's a link in the comments section if anybody wants to donate to our Teacher of the Day, Trisha. Link in the comment section, and I'll be live on Patreon at 10 a.m. Patreon.com/Dave Neal. Keep it kind out there, folks. There's no room in the comment section for any behavior that is nothing but love. All right, we'll talk to you in a little bit. Bye.